Mason Kellar built an empire from a prison cell. Troy Slab, Morton enforced it with blood. Devon Trace walked into HMP Ravensmill under a fake name, not to survive, but to burn it all down. In the heart of London's most dangerous prison, where silence is power and loyalty is bought with violence, one man risked everything to expose the gang that ruled from behind bars. What he uncovered shook the entire British prison system to its core. HMP Ravensmill was never meant to be a regular prison. Tucked away in the industrial shadows of southeast London, surrounded by decaying warehouses and abandoned rail tracks, it was a place where society sent the people it no longer wanted to remember. Officially, it was described as a Category A facility, housing the most dangerous and unpredictable criminals in Britain. But to those who had heard the whispers and stories that rarely left its walls, Ravensmill was something far worse. It wasn't just a prison. It was a kingdom ruled by violence, loyalty, and silence. The heart of this kingdom was a gang known as the Brick Line Syndicate. Their origins were vague. Some claimed it began as a brotherhood of armed robbers in the East End. Others believed it was formed after a prison riot in the early 2000s. But no one doubted who led it. Mason Kellar, a man with no family, no past worth speaking of, and no future outside concrete walls. He had been in Ravensmill for over 15 years, and in that time, he had turned a fractured group of thugs into an organized network that ran deeper than any outside gang. Inside the prison, the syndicate controlled everything. Drugs, phones, weapons, food rations, even visitation slots. If someone needed protection or passage through a different wing, they paid in favors or blood. Kellar wasn't the muscle, he was the mind. His enforcer was Troy Slab Morton, a 6'4" monster with dead eyes and a reputation so violent that even guards avoided crossing him. Slab's brutality kept order, but it was Kellar's strategy that built the empire. The syndicate's rise was made easier by a key weakness in Ravensmill's structure. Over the years, budget cuts and staff shortages had left the prison understaffed and overwhelmed. Guards were stretched thin, security systems outdated, and morale at an all-time low. Many of the younger officers were intimidated or corrupted early. Bribes, threats, or promises of protection made them loyal to the syndicate without even knowing it. The prison governor, Elaine Harper, was a former military officer known for her discipline and strict leadership. But even she couldn't deny that something had shifted since Kellar arrived. She launched internal investigations, changed shift schedules, even rotated guards, but nothing worked. Every time she tried to press harder, incidents increased. Riots flared up, guards were injured, inmates were found dead in their cells. Kellar always remained untouched. The prison itself was a sprawling, gray monolith. From the outside, it looked like a forgotten piece of history, built in the 1800s, surrounded by rusted fences and watchtowers that hadn't functioned properly in years. But inside, it had been retrofitted in the 1990s with new wings, CCTV systems, and high-tech gates. Still, technology was no match for what the syndicate had become. They communicated through coded messages hidden in drawings, tattoos, and even the rhythm of cleaning routines. They moved contraband through laundry baskets, food carts, and chapel donation boxes. Everything was a tool. Every moment had a meaning. And the worst part was, no one on the outside knew. Ravensmill's darkness was hidden behind clean reports and public statements that painted it as a challenging but controlled facility. But beneath that lie, something dangerous was growing. A gang that wasn't just surviving behind bars. They were thriving, recruiting, expanding, building something that couldn't be undone by a single raid or transfer. In this prison, violence wasn't a symptom. It was the system. And for the prisoners who refused to join the syndicate, the choice was simple: obey, bleed, or disappear. HMP Ravensmill had become a prison within a prison, and the Brick Line Syndicate ruled it with an invisible iron fist. But what no one knew, not even Kellar himself, was that someone was about to step into that world, not to join, but to destroy everything from the inside. Devon Trace entered HMP Ravensmill under the name Louis Crow. His paperwork said armed robbery, multiple counts. His behavior fit the profile: quiet, observant, but not aggressive. He blended in like he'd done time before. That was the point. In truth, Devon wasn't a criminal at all. He was a trained operative working for a covered intelligence unit within the Home Office. The mission was unofficial, buried beneath layers of classified files and false identities. His objective was simple in theory: infiltrate the Brick Line Syndicate and bring down its operation from the inside. Devon had volunteered. He wasn't chosen randomly. Years earlier, his younger brother, Marcus Trace, had died in another prison, stabbed during a staged fight in a laundry room. That prison had ties to Ravensmill, and the syndicate had been mentioned in hushed tones throughout the investigation. No one had ever been charged. Devon joined the service the following year, driven not by patriotism, but by revenge. He spent years training in criminal psychology, gang culture, and undercover operations. Ravensmill would be his first field mission. It might also be his last. He entered through Wing C, a quieter wing reserved for mid-level offenders and new arrivals. It was the perfect starting point. Less attention, more chances to observe. Devon knew not to push. He waited. He listened. He worked in the kitchen and volunteered for cleaning detail. Over time, he began to map out patterns. Who controlled what? Which guards looked the other way? Who passed coded notes through library books, and who paid in cigarettes for protection? His breakthrough came in the form of Harley Vane, a stocky inmate with a crooked jaw and nicotine-stained fingers. Harley wasn't top tier in the syndicate, but he was close enough to the core. He worked laundry detail, a key position that moved through every wing of the prison. Devon earned his trust by saving him during a staged fight in the mess hall, catching a punch that was never meant for him. From then on, Harley brought him in closer. He spoke in fragments, tested Devon's loyalty with small tasks, moving packages, delivering messages disguised as cleaning schedules. Then one night, Harley whispered something that shifted everything. Beneath the prison chapel, there was a tunnel. Devon had heard rumors of old escape routes, but this wasn't folklore. Harley claimed it was operational. Not for escapes, but for trade. Contraband was funneled through it during night shifts when external security was light. The guards assigned to the chapel were already bought. The tunnel had been sealed off decades ago and forgotten by the state. But the syndicate hadn't forgotten. Devon knew he had to confirm it, but he also knew he was running out of time. Each day inside increased the risk of exposure. He tried to contact his handler using a smuggled CM, but the number bounced back. Something was wrong. The next morning, the prison buzzed with whispers. Harley Vane was found dead in the shower room, throat cut cleanly, no witnesses, no noise. It had happened during a scheduled water shutoff, timed perfectly. No blood trail, no evidence. Devon felt the walls closing in. Harley's death wasn't random. It was a message. The syndicate had discovered a leak. Devon didn't know if he'd been identified or if Harley had been silenced for talking too much. Either way, the rules had changed. The prison felt different now, more alert, more dangerous. Devon noticed eyes on him during meal lines. His bunk checked more frequently, guards offering silent stares where once there was indifference. Still, he couldn't pull out. Not yet. He had a partial map of the tunnel's location and evidence stashed in a vent in his cell. He was closer than anyone had ever been, but with Harley gone and outside contact lost, he was truly alone. Every move forward risked exposure. Every minute increased the chances of being next. But Devon had made a choice long before walking into Ravensmill. He wasn't there to survive. He was there to finish what his brother never could. After Harley Vane's death, the atmosphere in HMP Ravensmill turned colder, heavier. The kind of silence that lingers right before violence. Devon Trace, still operating under his false identity, knew the syndicate was closing in. He began noticing subtle changes. His food was tampered with, one of his shoes went missing from the rack, and twice his cell door remained unlocked after lights out. These weren't accidents. In Ravensmill, nothing happened without reason. Word eventually reached him in a quiet, coded form. Etched into the side of his metal food tray with a nail, "BLO'd last." It was how the syndicate marked those who had broken trust. Those who were next. The blood list wasn't spoken about aloud. It traveled through symbols, crossed lines in tattoos, altered graffiti in the exercise yard, or in Devon's case, a playing card left face, down on his bed with a dot of red pen at the corner. He had been marked. Devon didn't have much time. His only chance was to find the tunnel Harley had mentioned. If he could document its existence, maybe he could force action from the outside. Even without confirmation that anyone was still watching, he began studying chapel work schedules, volunteering for every maintenance shift near that wing. After 5 days, he found his opening. A routine electrical fault had been reported near the back wall of the chapel. Devon offered to investigate with another inmate worker, but halfway through, he slipped away behind a broken piano and disappeared down a narrow hatch sealed by rusted bolts. The air was thick with dust and rot. The tunnel was real. Stone walls, barely lit by a single flickering bulb, ran under the chapel floor. Every few feet, he saw evidence of activity: discarded gloves, shoe prints in the dirt, and wooden crates stacked neatly along the edges. Inside one crate was a stash of prescription pills, mobile phones, syringes, and bundles of cash sealed in plastic. The syndicate hadn't just built a smuggling route. They'd built an empire under the prison. Deeper in the tunnel, Devon discovered something worse. A command post. Folded chairs, a chalkboard with shift schedules, even a burner laptop buried under a pile of blankets. Pinned to the wall were printed photos, guards, visitors, even inmates. Faces marked with red X. Some were still alive. Some weren't. At the center was a laminated floor plan of Ravensmill, updated and labeled. The syndicate's control of the prison wasn't an illusion. It was military-grade planning. Devon took photos with a pinhole camera hidden in the lining of his shirt. It had enough memory for 20 images. He used every frame. But on his way out, footsteps echoed through the tunnel. He ran. The narrow space made every sound louder, every shadow longer. As he turned a corner, a sharp pain exploded in his side. Troy, Slab, Morton had been waiting. The blade went in deep, once in the side, once in the back. Devon barely registered it. Blood poured fast. But survival instinct kicked in. He slammed his shoulder into Slab, knocking the larger man off balance, and crawled through the narrow gap back into the chapel foundation. He stumbled through a utility corridor out into the yard before collapsing beside the prison greenhouse. Guards called a medical alert. Devon drifted in and out of consciousness, unaware of the chaos forming around him. When he finally opened his eyes, he was strapped to a gurney in the medical ward. Sitting beside him, for the first time since he entered Ravensmill, was Governor Elaine Harper. She didn't speak right away. But when she finally did, it wasn't a warning, it was a quiet admission. She knew who he was. She'd suspected him since day one, but now, with blood staining his bandages and a tunnel exposed beneath her chapel, she made a choice. Harper agreed to help, not because it was right, but because if the syndicate expanded any further, even her power would collapse. Devon had the evidence. Now he had access. What he didn't have yet was time. 3 days after Devon Trace was stabbed in the chapel tunnel, the order came down. A full-scale operation, coded Operation Blackhold, was activated in silence at 300 a.m. Inside the prison, most inmates were still asleep. Outside, armored vans, riot squads, and a select group from the National Crime Agency surrounded HMP Ravensmill. No sirens, no loudspeakers. Just cold, tactical movement. The world's toughest gang prison was about to be shaken to its core. Governor Elaine Harper had handed over everything. Devon had discovered the tunnel photos, smuggling logs, even names of compromised guards. For years, Harper had played both sides, keeping the syndicate close enough to keep peace, but far enough to avoid full corruption. Now she made her final move. Her silence had allowed the syndicate to grow. Her cooperation might be the only way to destroy it. Inside the prison, chaos erupted when the operation began. Cells were breached simultaneously. Inmates were pulled from beds. Hallways flooded with riot officers. Those who resisted were restrained. Those who tried to hide were dragged out. Devon, still recovering in the infirmary, could hear the echoes of steel boots. Shan shouted orders through the concrete walls. It had begun. Mason Kellar was found alone in his cell in the isolation wing. He didn't resist. He stood turned around and held out his hands. No fear, no anger, just a smirk. He said nothing as he was cuffed and let out, walking past officers who had once feared him. His empire was crumbling, but his calm suggested something else. As if he had always known this moment would come. He hadn't tried to escape. He hadn't warned his lieutenants. He had simply waited. Elsewhere in the prison, Troy Slab, Morton was not as calm. He had barricaded himself in a maintenance room with a fire axe and a homemade spear. It took 6 officers in full riot gear to bring him down. 3 were injured, 1 severely. Slab was sedated and moved under maximum security. His arrest ended the syndicate's last remaining line of force inside the prison. By dawn, 54 inmates were in isolation. 17 guards were removed from duty. 8 external arrests were made, involving logistics handlers and ex-officers tied to the smuggling network. The tunnel was sealed with reinforced concrete. Surveillance was overhauled. Wing rotations were reshuffled. HMP Ravensmill had been flipped inside out. But the cost of victory was only just coming to light. 2 days after the raid, Devon Trace disappeared. Official reports claimed he had been extracted for safety and transferred under a high-level protection program. But no further details were released. Some said he had been sent abroad. Others believed he was killed during the operation, and his death was hidden to preserve the story. His real name never appeared in any official statement. Devon had entered the prison as a ghost and left as one. Then came the final twist. Elaine Harper was arrested 6 weeks later under charges of conspiracy, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Investigators uncovered encrypted emails, off-the-book meetings with known associates of Kellar, and financial transfers to offshore accounts. Her cooperation during the operation had been genuine, but it was too late to erase years of silent complicity. Her fall stunned the public. The warden who took down the syndicate had, for years, helped it survive. Mason Kellar was transferred to a government black site. Officially, his name was erased from the system, but rumors surfaced that he continued to communicate with the outside through encrypted letters passed by legal teams. The syndicate, though crippled, was not dead. Its message echoed in every prison across the UK's power doesn't vanish. It adapts. HMP Ravensmill was changed forever. Security was tightened. Staff were replaced. Policies rewritten. But even as new inmates arrived, some things remained. The walls still whispered. Tattoos still carried coded meanings. And in dark corners of the chapel, old loyalties remained buried beneath layers of concrete and silence. The world's toughest gang prison had been broken. But the war inside had only just begun.